The following is a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. The date is December 18th, 2020, and the subject is the emotional aspect of the root chakra in the sign of Sagittarius. Me. One of my biggest fears in this new phase of my life was failing my mother. My mother had always been my protector. She has been father and mother at the same time. I owe everything that I am to her, because without her care, attention from her, listening, respect, acceptance, and company from her, I would not have achieved anything from her. When they told me that these days she had to accept what I am, I felt a great fear of being left without that protection. I felt as if, by accepting who I am and my mission, I would move into another, more expansive stage of my life that neither my mother nor I could sustain. My guides told me, "You will need more mothers. If the earth is my mother, I will need the earth to support me, to support this new energy or old energy hidden in me, and to sustain and protect it. A single uterus was not enough. It would need thousands supporting this rebirth." My fear was that accepting this would take away from my mother the place she always had, almost denying her. But then the heavenly energy told me, "No, what you will do is give her her rightful place, that of mother and not of protector." When this December 14th, during the eclipse, I lay down on this sarcophagus, I cried, leaving this concept behind to receive a new one about myself and my relationship with my mother. She protected me from what I feared the most, occupying a parental role from which she had to free her by assuming my role in life. My biological mother had to be the mother of my I, while the divine mother, living in a network of wombs throughout the world, would become the mothers of my I am, that of mother and not of protector. I am. The nativity is coming, the return of the sun, and as everyone did at some time, you must align yourself to this process. The responsibility of knowing who you are here and now positions everyone to fulfill the mission of who they are here and now. With naturalness and flexibility, it is to return to the center, to shine again. This December 21st, a path from 2000 to 2400 years ends and a new one begins. For 3 days we will seek the balance of the body, 22, soul, the 23rd, and spirit, the 24th, until the sun is reborn on the 25th, initiating the return of the long days towards spring in the northern hemisphere. You had to die in the shadows to be reborn in the lights. Me. Today in the pyramid a beautiful song resounded in the dark. The voices of the Father, the Son, and the Mother joined in a sweet song. The Father said, "I am the Divine Father who guides you, and therefore I must remind you that it is time to stand up, to advance on the path as you have never done before." The Mother said, "In me you rise again, you are reborn, and in your birth and freedom I find joy. I am the Divine Mother. I am the mother of the new humanity. I am." It is said that at the beginning of the earth, God created Adam, the first man, from mud, earth, and water. It is said that Adam saw that in nature all the animals had his partner, but he was alone, and therefore from his right rib he created Eve, the first woman. They would both live happily in the Garden of Eden. But there was a condition. On a hill there was a tree, and God forbade them to take its fruit. But a malicious serpent approached Eve one day and tempted her to take one of the fruits that hung from a branch of the tree. Eve plucked the fruit and took a bite, which aroused the wrath of God. Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden into the desert where they had to learn to survive. God punished humans with suffering and condemned them to be slaves for their mistakes. Both had to learn to reproduce, to have sex, and this led them to discover pleasures and to live from sin. Food was no longer abundant, so they had to eat all they could, gluttony. Eve became pregnant with twins, Cain and Abel, and the birth was her punishment. Extreme suffering for her great sin of biting the apple. His sons aroused anger, blasphemy, reaching the point where Cain killed Abel. They had a third son, Set, who sought to bring justice, but Eve was condemned to have only sons who would fight among themselves. They would no longer live forever, and now they would have to die. The glory of life became a horrible weight, and for thousands of years this error would fall on all humanity, its descendants, until today. Me, a highly unlikely story in almost every way. I am. That's right. The creation arises with the hominids, which in evolution became Homo sapiens. In the fertile valley between the Tigris and Euphrates River, in Iraq and the Persian Gulf, the first settlers settled to practice agriculture and sedentary lifestyle for the first time. This was his garden surrounded by deserts, protected by desolation. Then El, the god-son of heavens, An-Nuna-Ki, descended into the world and chose one of the women of the tribes and made her his wife, mother of his children. Her name today is remembered as Lilith. From her, he gestated his first human son of the earth and the stars, Adam. The god gave Lilith everything she asked for, but what she was looking for the most was freedom. Freedom is only achieved with wisdom, he told her. Then Lilith asked for wisdom. To awaken wisdom, you need to learn knowledge, he told her. Then Lilith asked for knowledge. Knowledge is like a tree which has hundreds of fruits, which deliver all the truths through experience and creation, he told her. Lilith asked him to know and nourish himself from that tree. Thus he showed her the tree of life and knowledge, and Lilith understood the truth of all things. So she broke free. Being free, she recognized that he was one of many fruits, and that now she would also be. She became her own creator, and she freed herself from all conditions. It is thus that Adam asked God to give him another woman. He was frustrated by Lilith's betrayal, so from Adam he cloned a woman. But this time he told them, "You will not take the fruit of this tree ever," anticipating that perhaps history could repeat itself. Lilith understood that the force of the world was moved by the vibratory energy of nature, like sound waves only visible in the waves of the sea or a meandering river. For this reason, Lilith called herself the Serpent Woman, mother of all free women. When she learned that Eve had been born, she did not hesitate to approach her and free her as well, as she herself had done. The Serpent Woman whispered to Eve the truth and told her about the tree of life. She told her that a single bite of the fruit of the tree of knowledge would awaken the magic of wisdom, which felt like an orgasmic ecstasy, as full joy, pleasure in every corner of the body and soul. The bite of her apple would give him the gift of doubt. Lilith aroused doubt in Eve, and she returned to Adam with the question, the questioning. Then the man knew that he had repeated himself. Eve had realized that there was much more than living happily ever after, that paradise was not the end, it was not the goal, because in the long run it had become a prison. Freedom was the most important thing, and it was only obtained with wisdom, and this with knowledge, and this with the question that arises from doubt. Thus, the truth will set you free. Well, that freedom makes you masculine creator and feminine creator. Me, so it was because of doubt he threw them out of the garden. I am, of the utopian and unreal. The Garden of Eden is a trap for souls feeding on their most basic emotions, feeling good with all their needs covered, living happily. But there is no growth. There is no evolution or discovery. There is no inner power, no ability to create. Doubt leads to confusion, and if you don't know how to manage it, it becomes a regret, leading you to perdition. For this reason, humans considered that the greatest mistake, the greatest sin committed was having left God's protection for having doubted him. For this reason, from the suffering of this world, they try to recover their trust through faith and hope that one day he will let us return to paradise. Me. Sure, I understand. In other words, this story tells us how humanity was like a child, protected by his father or mother, afraid of discovering his own potential, of going out into the world to create, to manifest, to discover what he was capable of, afraid of becoming the creator himself. So they preferred to live in peace, calm, in normality, without questioning anything. But when the questioning began, humanity was lost in doubt, and this brought more conflicts and fights. But this only happened because we were given something before we knew how to manage it. I am. Knowledge only becomes wisdom if you are in balance. Otherwise, knowledge is a weapon that can build weapons, wars, destruction, and control. Freedom is not achieved in the external world, but in the internal world, and a being without the will to carry out this enormous personal task will live submerged in the darkness of his own ignorance and confusion, in constant sin. Me, the capital sin, the greatest of all, ignorance, but not of knowledge, but of coherence. That is why the gods refused to give us the fruit of the tree, because it was like giving a hyperactive child a scalpel in a kindergarten. I am. There, knowledge brings suffering. For this reason, in the last 2,000 years, the message of the I am has been given from the cross. It has been given from the suffering of those who share it, from the sacrifice of the mission for the fulfillment of the purpose. And if the purpose is creation, then creating would be painful. Me, the birth. I am. The birth of a new being occurred from pain, anguish, suffering, sacrifice, almost as an obligation and regret. But it was not always like this. Me. No, because what I remember from long before these biblical stories, women gave birth with pleasure. I am. Tell me. Me. I was a woman 12,000 years ago, and the Atlantean colonies had been founded during the Virgo era. Therefore, the character of the civilizations was maternal and feminine, although strict and orderly. The system was matriarchal, and therefore life was based on the sensitivity of the senses and the pleasure of life. From boys and girls, we learned to have sexual relations. We were talked to and taught. We had our first sexual experiences between the ages of 12 and 15, to know how to recognize what was pleasure and what was pain, what was joy and what was abuse. Women could start our fertility period at 12 years old, and for this reason it was important to know what it was about. We were told that the body was divine, and that enlightenment was akin to an orgasm. Therefore, learning to orgasm was like learning to become enlightened. We learned about sensitive areas, how to use them, how to feel them, how to generate pleasure almost without touching ourselves, just with energy, something that in India they call Tantra. We learned to have bisexual relationships to be able to connect with the different levels of energy waves. The incentive to pleasure was considered spiritual, and fertilization was the most sacred rite of all, although sex, they said, was not to bring babies, but to turn on the light of the being. For this reason, sex was practiced a lot for simply being sex, preparing the body for fertilization, pregnancy, and childbirth. During the three processes, pleasure and the orgasmic were present, and this prepared us to give birth without pain. Childbirth was experienced as the greatest of orgasms, with intensity and spiritual joy. It was magnificent, sacred. I am. Joy is the sensory manifestation of joy. It is the illumination of the physical body. The one who illuminates in life feels the joy in every part of his body. The ecstasy, the fire of the kundalini, of the serpent of light igniting in all directions. Joy is the key to living heaven on earth. Me. Therefore, we must live this new time from joy, because a story ended 2,000 years ago with suffering and sacrifice, and in this new time we must begin with coherence and joy. I am. The time of the new Christ consciousness begins. History got caught up in the concept of sin and suffering as forms of transcendence, and therefore this is the time to transcend said suffering. The Divine Mother receives the seed from the Divine Father, but this time the birth will take place in pleasure, joy, extreme happiness, because you already know the other way of living the spirit from the shadows. Now it is time to live from the light. Me. A new humanity is going to be born, and this planetary birth will take place from full joy. I am. Let there be light.
Mahasaham,